So we got the legs laid up last night. That's 100 pounds of clay. And then for the night, I just wrapped it in plastic. Sometimes you can wrap fabric, moisten fabric around the clay. We'll be doing that later. So I'm just going to undo it. We've got some clamps over here. So now I'll continue like I did yesterday with the laying up of this. Remember, we want these to be hanging the clay so the clay won't fall off and slump off. So now we have the first layer of clay suspended with the butterflies. As we work with it and as it dries a bit, we're going to need to wet it. You need to make sure you don't wet it too much because the water will load the clay. And but it has to keep a sense of moisture. I feel it drying out just a little bit in the back. Just getting a little drier. So you come over here and you can just wet it a bit. Right now would be a good time to add a plumb line. So if I just have it just barely touch down, there. We layered the clay around horizontally, now we layer it vertically. Let's see. Yeah. See that the manubrium is right about here in gladiolus, which means Spanish blade, because the Spaniards had the short blades, and Spaniards were gladiators, so they were the short bladed gladiators. That's what it comes from. Just bringing this to the clay that will support itself. Got a lot of the lumpiness out and got the movement started. What I'm concerned about is the movement. Now they got the getting the fluidity. That's what's important here. Then we'll establish the Boney points here, here, here. Good morning. This is day 3 of the layup. I have it in plastic, wrapped in plastic and cloth with some moisture. And I have it pinned back here, maybe with some clamps, I'm not sure. Let's go ahead and remove the plastic. It's through the bone structure that we achieve a lightness. Getting this area of the forehead really helps set the pace. We have the glabella up here, and there's a lot of the frontal muscles attached up here too. It's so much easier if you get a sense of the bone structure, just to get it started. And since his face tends to be square, his eyes sockets are somewhat square too. His supraorbital, infraorbital, get that, the top and bottom, bone structure working. And right now we're just going for bone structure. Okay, making sure everything's straight and square. A lot of this is conjecture. You have to interpret from the photographs what you assume the bone structure to be like. He's got a nice, very wide, broad chin. Very wide. And it gives him these very nice, attractive dimples. There's a tendency to make the eyes too flat across. They're actually rounded like that. So we need to keep everything centered. Now the first thing to check is the height, and the height is right on, adding about an inch to the base, so I'm particularly okay with that, the height. Now you'll see that I added shoulders to this. Before there were no shoulders, and the way I arrive at the distance of the shoulders is 2 head lengths apart. So we've got the shoulders there. Now, to get the width of the rib cage, I'm going to use what they call 5-eyed cubed, which is basically this distance across, which is 5 eyes, and this area here, that's a 5-eyed skull. Okay, so right under the nose to the top of the head. I'm not going to put the plumb line on it right now. I will after I get the shoulders laid in. Then I'll get the center line using the plumb line. But the way we determine the width of the rib cage is the outer rib right in here, and then here is basically we determine the size of the rib cage by going from the manubrium down to the bottom of the rib here. So there's the rib cage. And 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the rib cage size is 4 or 5 IQ. So he's a little thick in the ribs right now. So I'm going to build out the shoulders, just lay them out. I've got a gesture. Now, one of the drawings shows him kind of like this. And that's repetition without variation. It's always better to have repetition with variation, something like that, okay? A couple of quick notes. When using the water-bound clay, you want to make sure that your metal, particularly the iron or the steel you use, you create a barrier by putting shellac on. Shellac takes about 15 minutes to dry. The steel will react with the water-bound clay to where it kind of hardens when it's next to the steel. So if by shellac can create a barrier, the clay seems to last a little bit longer. The other note is when using the 5 IQ method of measurement, it's very useful when you're creating contrapposto. So if I'm standing like this, the hip goes up, the rib cage goes down. So this side, the hip goes up about 1 eye, distance of an eye, and then the shoulder drops down about the distance of an eye. That's a good general gauge. It's not always accurate, but you have to use your own judgment to determine that. So I have this drop down about 1 eye. See how that's about 1 eye? And this goes up about 1 eye. And here the structure of the armature is the same way. The position of the central columns of the armature is extremely important because you don't want to have to dig in and move the steel around later. Inevitably, sometimes that's what happens, particularly with a project that you're don't have a maquette to measure from. You see that that is perfect. And if we put it on the side, we want to look at it on the side. We can also look at it this way. Got it from the ear. The tragus is usually where we look at it from. And that is perfect. We can see that the elbows are halfway in between the iliac crest and the bottom rib. Okay, so this is where the elbows need to be relatively. This one's pulled back, so it's extended upwards a bit, mid-range of the rib cage. If this arm were to drop, it would be halfway in between the rib cage. The next thing is, do you have the wrists in the right location? The wrists are in line with the pubis symphysis. The face, the hand size, should be the face size. The feet should be the head length. The chest should be 4, 5i cubed, 2, 3, 4. That's the rib cage. 1, 2. So you have head here, head 4, 5i cubes of the ribs. And then the overall body length is 8 heads. And have we maintained the height? I'm hoping that we have maintained the height.